If you don't have the knowledge of what drives that person, what excites that person, it's really hard to communicate or to support that person. This is true for employers and true for us as support workers as well.
If there was a hotline we could call for someone to guide us and offer advice in these situations, even just someone we could say, look, these are the issues we're having. Here's the challenge we're coming up against. How do we help with that? I'm often worried about making the wrong call and making a misstep because of something I didn't know.
I think you just need to open that communication. You need to be able to hear what people are saying because not everybody will say what they really want you to hear. We all interpret things slightly differently sometimes.
I found that quite often pride gets in your way. So if you think too much of yourself, you're going to step all over yourself. Not so much humble, but being sure of what you can do, but not being out there. You see people that come in and they're so cocky, and then they can't do the job. And they've been faking it to get the job. That only lasts so long.
From Free Rein Associates and Life Strategies, this is the Diversity Disconnect podcast. I'm Mallory Tomlinson. Episode 2, New Skills on the Block, Bringing the Right Stuff for Success. Have you ever asked yourself, what makes me employable? Take a moment to reflect on this. Why should someone hire you? If you're an employer, flip the question around. Why should someone want to work for you? What makes you a good manager? Were these easy questions for you to answer? Chances are, during your reflection, you identified at least one skill that you've developed and strengthened throughout your career. It may be a specific license you have for your field of work, such as a Class 4 driver's license, or your welding tickets. Or you might have thought about your stellar customer service skills and your ability to solve problems with innovative solutions. When it comes to selling ourselves in the labor market, as a prospective employee or employer, the skills you bring to the table are what ultimately set you apart. There are a certain set of skills we all need in order to enter and grow within the world of work. The Government of Canada has identified these as the skills for success.
The Skills for Success model includes foundational skills such as numeracy, writing, and reading. It also includes skills necessary to navigate everyday life, such as communication, digital skills, and problem solving. The final 3 skills, creativity and innovation, collaboration, and adaptability, reflect the quickly changing and diverse world we live in.
The Skills for Success model was designed for everyone, not just job seekers. Employers, workers, training providers, governments, and communities all benefit from these skills.
How often did your research participants mention one of the skills for success in your conversations with them?
Oh, it was every single time. Whether they were direct, like nobody directly was like, the skills for success, I know those. No, but like I hadn't heard of them, if I'm being fully honest, until we had done this. Whether they like directly said the term that was used in the skills for success or just kind of like alluded to it, used a synonym, whatever, every single person we talked to.
Every single time.
Yeah.
I would say the ones that are like huge all the time is adaptability, communication of all kinds, and I think collaboration as well, in terms of people wanting, like, they want the communication as a first step, and then they want to be able to collaborate together towards a solution once that communication has occurred.
Part of the research team's data collection efforts included a short survey for job seekers, employees, and employers to complete. A survey not only allowed us to gather data from a larger pool of people, but it also enabled us to compare how these 3 groups perceive the importance of the skills for success in finding and maintaining employment.
Some of the skills, it was like a general agreement that things were helpful. There were a few, though, that were a bit disconnected in a way. Like one that jumped out a lot is that employees find that creativity and innovation is much more important for obtaining employment, whereas employers and job seekers don't quite see it the same way. Another one, too, is the digital skills for obtaining employment. Job seekers and employees find that that's helpful, whereas employers don't quite see that is beneficial. Those two things, like the creativity and the digital, come back up in when you're looking at maintaining employment, but mostly from the lens of employees. Job seekers and employers kind of drop off in that sense of seeing the importance of those.
Creativity and innovation is a huge part of everyday life for, people with physical disabilities, neurodivergence, in particular. That's like what I can speak to. The creativity and innovation is just a huge part of everyday life. And so I think employers may not see that as much if they're not in close contact or understanding of the lives of those from underrepresented groups. I think maybe they don't see the value in it as much. Whereas, like, if you are a person in that position, you're like, I've had to be creative in how I'm getting out of my bed today and how I'm making it to my job, and then once I'm at the job, I have to figure out all of these ways in which I'm going to make this work for me. So that's very front of mind for the employees who have been successful in maintaining employment.
I think, too, what's worth mentioning is that even though there were kind of disconnects there, each group does still value these things.
After analyzing the data, the team was able to identify the most important skills for success in both finding employment and maintaining employment, as identified by rural job seekers, employees, and employers.
When it comes to finding employment, respondents ranked reading, adaptability, and collaboration second, third, and fourth, respectively.
For maintaining employment, respondents found adaptability to be the second most important skill, followed by collaboration and problem solving.
But what was the number one skill?
Communication, hands down.
For both finding and maintaining employment.
One place I worked at, instead of having regular staff meetings and discussing things with everybody, they would tell this person one thing, they'd tell that person something a little bit different, and then this person gets something a little bit different again. And so everybody's confused and not understanding anything. You need open communication, but you also need consistent and clear communication. Staff meetings on maybe a regular basis when you're communicating to everybody the same message instead of, changing it slightly or whatever from one person to another, because that just causes a lot of confusion. It can cause a lot of problems amongst the staff not getting along in that too. The big thing is communication.
So when communication isn't present, you're probably going to see poor work outcomes, right? You're going to see mistakes. You're going to see loss of maybe product. You might even see injuries within the workplace if someone's, not able to ask questions. In terms of the employee side, if there's a lack of communication, you're probably going to see disengagement, right? You're going to see apathy. Maybe you'll see boredom. And that's a problem because that all leads into things like productivity. Just because someone's present within a working space doesn't necessarily mean that they're doing the thing that they are supposed to be doing. So presenteeism would be perhaps an issue when there's a lack of communication.
Just as unclear or inconsistent communication can hinder us at work, respondents found themselves equally hindered if communication between parties wasn't a two-way process.
You also need employers that'll be, how can I put it? They need to be listeners. A lot of them are just their bosses and I'm in control and what I say goes. But they need to be able to sit back and listen to the employees because maybe the employees have some good ideas and some good suggestions.
Don't be afraid to ask for feedback from your staff. I become a better people manager when I start asking my team for feedback on how I can improve, but also ask them for input on business ideas or other ways of achieving your business goals. When you ask your staff to be part of the business, they're more invested in its outcomes.
When I think about what we observed, about communication being or not being present, it wasn't so much about people being able to talk or not talk. It was about being available or not being available. So when people described good communication happening in the workplace, they didn't exactly say that they could talk a lot, or there were a lot of meetings, or that they got emails here and there. What they were talking about is that the employer was available for them, whether it was verbally or non-verbally, whether it was through email or maybe through a text. Like there was this sense of, if I reach out, they are open.
But for some of Alex's clients, their communication challenges can prevent them from getting a foot in the door due to a lack of technology access.
I find the clients that don't have a phone very hard to help, because how are you supposed to get in touch with them? How's an employer supposed to call them up in an emergency to say, Joe, can you work today? Without reliable communication access, it's very hard to get out of the cycle of poverty.
It should be like genuine communication. But like if your employees don't feel like they can be honest and like genuinely say the things they need to say to like have things be improved, and if you don't know how to take that feedback, things are not going to go well.
Communication is ongoing, and have respect. They wanted to receive respect, and they felt, I think, that if they were given respect, they would be able to give that back a little bit more readily.
When you have a willing, useful, and vibrant town council that you've built relationships with, and non-for-profits and all of those things, if you've learned how to craft a meaningful rationale, a story, you will find ways to build your community. But if you have maybe a challenge in your community connecting with various partners, that might be a little bit more difficult.
I'll use myself as an example. I'm from the UK, so I had no interaction with Indigenous cultures or communities before moving to Canada. I came out to BC and then have an entirely new outlook and appreciation. Because of that, I've been able to have numerous interactions with Indigenous peoples and culture, develop partnerships with different communities, and yeah, it's been beneficial in that regard.
You don't know where to go or who to turn to. Like, okay, there's Work BC, but Work BC doesn't normally send you to these other services. The only reason I found out about the program that really helped me get back on my feet was because I knew the right person who knew it existed. So we need to have something in the community where people with disabilities who are looking for help, that they can find it, that needs to be more visible. Where we can go, where they can go for the extra help, because it's just not here. It's just not. And I lucked into finding help.
When it came down to collaboration, when people were like wanting it or noticing that it was working, it was when it was this like fully encompassed collaboration. We noticed it in one community in particular that it was working really well, and it's because everybody was so on board, I guess, with being in a collaboration. And so that includes employers collaborating with service providers who are collaborating with the individuals, and it's kind of this nice little like cycling loop where everybody's kind of getting pieces from everybody.
Everybody who needs to be there is there and actively engaged.
Yeah, the actively engaged part too.
Collaboration for me, when I'm looking at what the research participants shared to us, was that there can be success for all parties when all parties are working together towards the same goal. But what's important is that we all have to be open to hear the messages about what's working and what's not for all of the stakeholder groups.
The way that we collaborate with each other, we impact each other. When I think about collaboration in the context of our project, It's really how intentional that collaboration is, and then how we decide that it will happen, and how do we make it inclusive, and how do we make sure that it's fair, how each one is contributing, and how all these voices are coming together, and what spaces have been created for all of those voices and strengths to come into place and participate.
Collaboration brings with it many benefits for workers, workplaces, and communities. For service providers like Alex, collaboration helps combat burnout.
Fresh staff is good because you do get burned out with ideas. You need new ideas, and I'm working on that with one of our partners right now, to get ideas from different managers and different teams. Fresh ideas. Oh, I would never think of that for a job. Like, you know what I mean? Oh, that's a great idea. When we work together, develop solutions together, it alleviates some of the pressures from the job.
For employers, ensuring effective collaboration between your team helps improve business productivity. But as George found, you have to be mindful of who you pair to work together.
Being with people with diverse abilities wasn't a challenge for me, but it was for other employees. Maybe they didn't quite get it. So certain people couldn't work with certain people, but that was just safety. And maybe I could have mixed them closer, but it wasn't worth it, for a few hours of their lives just to do that.
And when communities collaborate intentionally with a shared vision and shared goals, our researchers observed strong, resilient regions with citizens who felt like they could rely on their leaders. This is the vision Shane has for her community.
One of the things I would like to see would be all the bands get together, pool their resources, and actually build some manufacturing plants. Have their own welding, mechanics, furniture making and that kind of stuff. Because people have offered this. That could be proving ground for a lot of people. You come in there, do your first, second, third, fourth year of apprenticeship, and then you go out. You work for someone else to get your red seal, because by that time, you'll be confident enough in yourself that you can do it. There's so much land available and so many different grants available too, that they get equipment and do training with the equipment to prep the ground for the buildings that they place. There's so many different things, but it needs to be done and headed by First Nations.
Interpersonal skills are the skills you use between and among other people. They are the basis of relationships and how you interact with, adjust for, and consider others.
So in our research, interpersonal skills covered a wide variety of things like accountability, responsibility, ownership, dependability, confidence, self-esteem, those kinds of things. And that wasn't just present from individuals, like that was present in employers and community service providers too, right? One thing that was really important that our research participants shared with us was the role of community service agencies in helping them develop these interpersonal skills, like feeling confident in their abilities, feeling a sense of agency in their career direction, just feeling good about themselves and feeling ready, willing, and able to make a change or, put their time and energy into an employer.
I mean, a lot of people did mention motivation as something. A lot of that came from employers, unfortunately, of looking for people to have that. Because people recognize in themselves their own motivation. They know they have it. It's just not being seen.
When someone is apathetic or fearful in an organization, they're not necessarily going to be able to work to their best. There might be spaces where they just don't care about the kind of work. And employers see that and think, oh, well, they're all, quote unquote, bad workers or they have a bad work ethic. But that actually could be just a side effect of a larger issue. And many of the absence of other success factors, like maybe they don't have the training, maybe they aren't able to communicate with their employer effectively about what's going on for them. Maybe they're working in isolation and not collaborating, or maybe the opportunity is underpaid, for example. So a lot of the interpersonal skills or the poor work ethic or poor motivation that employers see in individuals is often a result of other factors, right? It isn't just attributed to like that individual.
These interpersonal skills can be particularly helpful factors for employers in supporting their teams and navigating difficult emotions that can arise on the job.
Certain moments, it's almost like hostage negotiations, like learning how to talk people down out of a really, really, really bad mood. And I've noticed that either a skill that somebody can have or not. It's certainly one that can be difficult to learn. But when you're talking someone down that's already being aggressive, being angry, etc., and you don't have that inner self-confidence or assuredness, they're going to see right through it.
As Madeleine and Emily's conversations with George began to explore the social emotional skills that influence employment success, he took a moment to reflect on some common attitudes toward people who are unemployed. How some of his peers will make dismissive comments that folks on social assistance programs are lazy.
That's like our unemployment rates right now. It's not that people don't want to work. A lot of it is that people that are actually unemployable, right? They don't have the social skills. They don't have the essential skills to be able to get up and go to work and maintain those jobs.
We need to help folks develop their interpersonal skills first, their social skills, before we put them in an employment situation. Otherwise, we're setting some people up for failure.
And sometimes we need to have those difficult conversations with ourselves to reflect on what of our own skills need to be improved.
Sometimes we don't see where our holes are. We don't see where our weak spots are for improving, for getting ourselves out there more. Folks can be very blind to their own sort of weaknesses where employers can see them very clearly. You kind of just go, okay, well, I didn't get that job for whatever reason. Just move on to the next application. And there's no sort of reflection on what I needed to necessarily do to get the job besides tweaking a resume.
No matter what field of work you're in, all of us benefit from a common set of skills that help us navigate our day-to-day lives, also known as the skills for success. Developing and strengthening these core skills that include both essential and interpersonal skills is a practice we must all continuously engage in throughout our careers.
When we're able to build on those small successes, that's when you're able to feel competent, right? That's going to give you the confidence you need to express yourself and know that you actually do possess skills.
It's also important to remember that employment success relies on both employees and employers working in collaboration with clear, consistent two-way communication. And when we expand our relationships beyond the walls of our workplace to include our community at large, the positive impacts expand beyond ourselves.
What we observed there was very much a feeling of nobody's falling through the cracks, like there's somebody looking out for everybody.
Next time on the Diversity Disconnect podcast.
I would, on a daily basis, have somebody say to me, like, are you serious? They had to go to the bottom of the barrel to hire somebody like you?
If we want to solve a problem, we need to have a shared awareness about what it's like for people who are underrepresented.
You treat employees well, they will take care of your place. When you take care of your team, they'll stay with you.
I didn't understand that people didn't know that residential schools were a thing and that kids never came home from those things. It was ingrained in us, like this is what happened. And when you don't know those traumas exist and you have old unconscious beliefs about Indigenous people, you know, what I've seen is that so much of that is that unconscious set of beliefs that are guiding their behaviors is really like kind of a dangerous weapon.
I am honored to work, live, and play on the stolen ancestral lands of the Stolo peoples, including Chawathal, Yale, Shwahamo, Shiam, Squaw, and Squiala peoples. I am thankful for their leadership and stewardship of these lands. As a trans non-binary person, I am grateful for Indigenous peoples' work in respecting, honoring, and uplifting gender diverse peoples.
Diversity Disconnect is funded by the Government of Canada. To learn more about the research, visit freereignAssociates.ca/diversity-disconnect or check out the links in our show notes. The Diversity Disconnect podcast is hosted by Mallory Tomlinson and produced by Megan Boekhorst. Our audio engineer is Tim McAlpine. Guests include Desiree Carlson, Cassie Taylor, Madeleine Warkentin, and Emily White. This episode featured Megan Boekhorst as Jordan, Diana King as Shane, Peter Bailey as George, and Harmony Toth as Alex. The Diversity Disconnect podcast was developed by Free Reign Associates and Life Strategies.